What's going on? This is Ryan with Automatic Comics, and up next we are going to go over the top 10 surprising sales I saw last week. Stay tuned. All right, so before we get started, please remember to hit that like button and hit the subscribe button if you'd like to see more content like this. I've gotten a number of comments recently about the top 10 videos, what people wanted me to make these some more again. It's not that I don't like making them. I do actually really enjoy making these ones. They just take a lot of time to put together. So I haven't really had as much time to put them together, but I had some time today, so I decided to make one of these videos. So if you haven't watched these before, what I do is I watch the weekly Heritage comic auction. I price out anywhere from about 150 to 200 books per week across all ages, really generally focused on keys from those different ages. And I pick out 5 books that surprised me on the high side and 5 books that surprised me on the low side. So this gives you a view of those sales that are either big records, books that might be trending up, those outsized high sales, but also sales that are on the low side to show that there are always deals out there. No matter what the fair market value is, whatever the value is for those books, you can find those deals if you look for them. So let's start with number 10. This is a low sale. This was Marvel Superheroes Secret Wars number 8. This was a CGC 9.8 that sold for just $552. I was definitely tempted to bid on this one. This felt like a pretty good price for this book, especially considering we've got Secret Wars coming to the MCU. This is one of the most recognizable Spider-Man covers of all time. This is the first time you have the black suit identified as the symbiote. So that's really kind of like the origin to Venom. Now, this is also the book that had an interior splash page sell for $3.36 million earlier this year, in January of this year, for an original art page that had Spider-Man in his black suit on there. I mean, I think that's one of the things that really ended up driving up the prices on this book earlier this year, where we had the record price of $1,260, but it has been pretty stable around $700 for quite a few months now. This was definitely a noticeably low sale. I had estimated the price at $690. This was 20% below that estimate. Like I said, it had peaked earlier this year at $1,260. That's a drop of 56% from that sale. And if I remember correctly, that sale happened, I think, the same weekend, right after that $3.36 million sale. So it's just somebody that I think got a little bit of FOMO. They had that big sale, thought that might spike the price of the book in general, and they picked that one up. But it is a pretty common book. It's a Copper Age book, 1984. And so it's not like this isn't one that has a lot of copies out there. It's still up quite a bit from where it was a few years ago. This is a book that was consistently selling for around $200 to $250. But if you really look at it with how popular this book is, I don't see it getting back to those prices. That seems really cheap at this point for this book, with the popularity of Spider-Man and Venom and all of that. But I wouldn't be surprised if this book does trend down a little bit more. Now, for alternatives with this book, you don't really need an alternative. You could just go for a lower grade, go for a raw copy, but generally it's a book that you're not going to get it for much below about $100 to $150 regardless of condition. All right, now number 9. This was a high sale. This was Amazing Spider-Man number 238, CGC 9.8 that sold for a record $8,100. Now, this was not a normal Amazing Spider-Man number 238. This was the Canadian price variant. This is a book that you do not see very often in a 9.8. It's actually much less common just in general, but in a 9.8, it is extremely uncommon. This is the first appearance of Hobgoblin. The standard US copy has a price of 60 cents, but you can see on this copy it has a price of 75 cents. Now, for an idea of how rare these books are, for the standard Amazing Spider-Man 238, there are 7,884 copies, universal copies graded on the census, with 609 in a 9.8. With the Canadian price variant, there are just 215 copies on the census, with just 12 in a 9.8. That is 35 times less copies of the Canadian price variant overall, and 50 times less copies in a 9.8. This is not a common book in a 9.8. And to many collectors, this type of differentiation, Canadian price versus US price, doesn't really matter. Just like with newsstands, it's not something that really matters to them. But there are collectors that this matters a lot to. Like me personally, I prefer newsstand editions. I would love a Canadian price variant of this book. And some people will pay a significant premium for those books, just like with Mark Jewelers or the National Diamond inserts, those things that make the book a little more unique, make it a little more rare. And so in this case, I had estimated the price of this book at $6,500. This was 25% above my estimate. Now, the record was $7,800 from November of 2020, but this book on average has been trending down, so I thought maybe it would be trending down a little bit as well, but people jumped at the chance to pick up a copy of this book. Like I said, only 12 9.8s out there, and it beat that record by $300. Now, that might not sound like a lot, but it is still showing that this book is retaining a significant amount of value, a significant premium above the standard US copies. A 9.8 direct edition of this book can be found for around $2,500 to $2,700 right now. So this is selling for 3 times that of the standard US direct edition. So definitely a big premium for this book. If you want an alternative, again, you don't really need to go looking anywhere else. You can pick up the direct edition of this book. Like I said, it costs significantly less, and you don't need to get a 9.8 and pay thousands of dollars. But regardless of condition, this book will generally sell for around $250 to $300. So it's not cheap, but a lot less than over $8,000. All right, so next we've got a low sale. This is a big Bronze Age key. This is Marvel Spotlight number 5 with a CGC 5.0 that sold for just $960, falling below that $1,000 mark. This is the first appearance of Ghost Rider. This book has been on a pretty constant downtrend for a while now. Bronze Age keys in general have been trending down. It's just that they're relatively common. And so when we had all those price spikes, people were just like, I'll sell my books for that. And so you had a lot more copies that keep coming out. And so that's been driving the prices down. Now, there are rumors that they're going to be bringing Ghost Rider to the MCU, but I have no idea if that's actually going to happen. I haven't seen a lot of facts or truth behind that yet, so we'll see. I had estimated the price of this book at $1,250. This was 23% below that estimate. This book had actually peaked in April of this year with a sale of $2,000. That's a drop of 52% from that peak sale. Now, if you look at the historical price trend for this book from about the last 5 years, this sale of $960 for a 5.0 is right in line where you would expect this book to be if the comic boom had never happened. So while yes, it's a significant drop, it's still up from where it was before, and it's in line with where this book would have been if the comic boom didn't happen. So that's just something that I always like to keep in mind. It's something I talked about in one of my prior videos I did on kind of like market trends for these books. Now, for alternatives, when I see the prices of the first appearances really coming down like this, I'd prefer to go for that first appearance. That's the book that I would rather have, but it is still an expensive book. So if you're looking for a more affordable option, Ghost Rider 1 is always the one that I recommend because it is a very similar looking cover, and it's not much more affordable, but it is definitely a more affordable book. You could get that same 5.0 for a little less than half of that price for around $400 to $450. But again, if you could get that first appearance, you can get it around that trend from where it had been a few years ago. That's what I'd be looking for right now. All right, now number 7, this is a high sale. We're gonna look at some pre-code horror with this one. This is Tales from the Crypt, number 35, with a raw 4.0 selling for $720. We are after Halloween, but pre-code horror Golden Age is still selling strong. This is a classic werewolf cover by Jack Davis. This is some people's favorite werewolf cover from the Golden Age. For me personally, my favorite cover is Tales from the Crypt 46, which is also a Jack Davis cover, but this is a great one as well. Now, this book has been on a pretty strong uptrend, or as strong as an uptrend can be for a book that doesn't sell very often, like we've got with Golden Age with pre-code horror books. This is a very tricky book to price. It has relatively similar sales prices across a very wide range of grades. So basically what that's saying is that there's a lot of demand for this book. People are willing to pay a certain price regardless of condition, but they're also not paying up for it. They're not paying these extremely high prices as the grades go up. Now this is still expensive. This is a raw 4.0 that sold for $720. I had estimated the price of this book at $550, so this beat my estimate by 31%. A graded 4.5 sold this month for $729. So that's around the same price, but for a graded copy, half grade higher. So I feel like this raw copy was definitely a strong sale. Now, on average, I have been continuing to see strength in the Golden Age. I haven't done a market video in a while, but I'm seeing this similar consistent trends of overperforming in the Golden Age, and that includes pre-code horror. Now, you can have low sales and high sales like anything else, but it's all about what the average trend has been. And that might be why you've noticed that for me personally, that's one of the reasons I've been buying a lot more Golden Age books recently. I've been seeing Silver and Bronze Age books kind of trending down, Golden Age books staying very consistently strong, so that's where I have been buying a lot of books. But for this one, for alternatives, there are a number of great werewolf covers out there with pre-code horror. I would say just go out and find one that appeals to you. If you want to stay within the EC run, I mentioned issue 46, but that one is actually more expensive than this book. But another option is Vault of Horror 17. That one is a Johnny Craig werewolf cover. It's not one that I like as much as this one. It's still a cool cover though. And that one in the same grade goes for around $500 graded, if you can find it. Right, now number 6, this is a low sale. This is Amazing Spider-Man number 14 with a CGC 1.8 that sold for just $750. This book has been getting crushed ever since No Way Home came out. I mean, it had a little bit of a spike after No Way Home, but then it's just been on a constant downtrend since then, which personally, it's a little crazy to me since this is arguably Spider-Man's biggest villain. You've really got Doc Ock and the Green Goblin, and his first appearance of Green Goblin is on the cover, great cover, and this book has just been correcting back to that trend line that this book was on prior to the comic boom. Now, I had estimated the price of this book at $1,100. This was 32% below that estimate. The record sale was from April of this year for $1,780. That is a drop of 58% from that peak. Now, personally, I think whoever picked this up got this book for a great deal. This book was selling for $600 to $750 in this grade from around 2018 to 2020. So this is, I think, a book that is actually overcorrected from where I would expect it to be. Just a lot of people selling that book after they perceive Green Goblin being done in that Spider-Man universe. It's still a major Silver Age Spider-Man key. There's going to always be demand for them, and so that is when you want to be looking for those books. That's something I've talked about in some recent videos as well, when I picked up that Amazing Spider-Man number 5, the Doctor Doom crossover, that when you see deals on Silver Age Amazing Spider-Man keys, that's really the time to buy them. So that's something that I've talked about recently. I have a number of Silver Age Spider-Man keys that I've picked up recently. It's just something that I think when I see those for a deal, those are the books that I want to grab. Now, for alternatives, just like I talked about with Ghost Rider, I generally prefer the first appearance if you're seeing the prices come down in those books. But a more affordable option, just 3 issues later, is Amazing Spider-Man number 17. It's his second appearance. For that same $750, you could get about a 6.5, so a really nice presenting copy. But on the lower end, in the 2 to 2.5 range, around the same grade, you could get a book for under $200. Not a bad deal for the second appearance of a major Spider-Man villain. Right, now number 5, jumping over to DC. This is Showcase 22 with a high sale. CGC 2.5 sold for a record $3,720. Those big Silver Age DC keys are much less common than their Marvel counterparts, so you just don't see them come up for sale as often. For example, with this one, there are 1,069 universal copies on the census versus around 2,500 to 5,000 for most of the big Marvel keys. They're also a little bit earlier, so that leads to the fact that I think that they're a little less common as well. Now, this book has gone up considerably over the last 1 to 2 years, and it really had seemed to be flattening out or trending down a little bit in a lot of grades, but this was a strong sale for this book. This was a decent looking 2.5. Didn't have quite the really deep greens that I like on the cover, but it didn't have the really faded greens either. So it was a nice looking copy. I'd estimated the price at $2,750, but this was 35% above my estimate. The record was $3,000 from February of this year, and this even beat that record by 24%. So this was a very strong sale for this book. It's possible that this is driven by the fact that an 8.5 sold in September for $93,000. That was a massive record for that book. That was a huge sale in an 8.5. So that could have driven this sale price a little bit. Now, there are a ton of alternatives for Green Lantern. You could go for Showcase 23 or 24, his second and third appearances. But I think a good kind of like filler book for this one, if you can't get 22 right now, is Green Lantern number 4. It's a relatively similar cover where he's trying to divert some missile. And so I think that one is a reasonable option. It's not a key, so it's not like something that you're going to have, like with his first or second appearance, that kind of thing that's going to drive up the value nearly as much. But it is a cool looking cover, costs considerably less. For about $200 to $350, you can get a book in the range of a 4.0 to a 7.0. So a nice presenting copy is going to cost you significantly less. And I just see it as a good placeholder just because of the appearance of the cover for Showcase 22. All right, now number 4. This is a low sale. This is Fantastic Four number 6 with a CGC 4.5 that sold for just $1,170. This is a great Marvel key. It is a multi-key book, which I've talked about. I always love those multi-key books. It is the second appearance of Doctor Doom. It is the second appearance of Submariner. It is the first Marvel supervillain team up. They are all on the cover. I think it's a cool book, a great book. But Doom and Submariner books have definitely been on a downtrend lately. There's just a lot of hype from the Black Panther movie, and it's inevitable to have those books come down after that. Plus all the comic boom hype and all of that kind of stuff. It's not a big surprise that these books have been coming down. Now, I haven't seen Wakanda Forever yet, so don't spoil anything in the comments. If I can help it, I'd like to not have that stuff spoiled. Now, I had estimated the price of this book at $1,750. This was 33% below my estimate, but based on recent sales, this seemed like a great deal. A 5.0 sold on October 20th for $2,250. A 4.0 sold on November 4th, just about a week ago, for $1,400. So at $1,170 for a 4.5, this feels like it was a great deal. Now, it is down considerably. The record was $2,950 from August of this year. This is a drop of 60% from that record price. I would not be surprised if that sale was right around when the kind of this speculation or the little bit of like the screenshot or video shot of Doom potentially appearing in the Black Panther movie came out. It could have been kind of a FOMO buy, possibly. I don't know for sure though. But yeah, that's why you really need to be careful when you get those kind of news breaks. That's not when you want to be buying a book, paying that huge record for the book. Now, this is definitely a book that's been trending down, but this sale doesn't quite put it in line with the trend prior to the comic boom yet. So it's possible it could continue down, especially with the movie just coming out and how we often see drops in prices for keys related to characters in movies right after those movies come out. So yeah, it was a good price in comparison to recent sales, but I wouldn't be surprised if we see a continued downtrend in this book. Now, for alternatives, this is already the alternative, or one of the alternatives for Doctor Doom and Submariner. And with prices coming down on big keys, I like to go for as big of a key as possible. Their first appearances in issue 4 and 5 are very expensive. So if this one's getting more affordable, I would say this is a reasonable one to go after. But like I said, I wouldn't be shocked if prices continue to cool, so just be cautious with it. All right, now number 3, this is a high sale. This is Detective Comics number 122 with a CGC 5.0 that sold for a record $6,000. I always like to pay close attention to books that I own to make sure I'm aware of the current prices, and this is a book that is on my keeper list. I have a 4.5 of this book. Now, this is the first time you have Catwoman on the cover of a comic book. And it's always crazy to me to think about that because this is 7 years after her first appearance in Batman number 1. It took 7 years for her to appear on a cover. But since then, she's become one of the major staple characters of the Batman universe. She is on covers all the time. Artists love drawing her, putting her on covers of these books. Now, I had estimated the price of this book at $4,000. This was 50% above that estimate. This was a huge sale for this book. Prior record was $4,000 from 2020. This book doesn't sell all that often, and it really had been relatively flat with the few sales that I'd seen. So this was a very strong sale for this book. Now, I know I own this book, so take what I say here with a grain of salt, but I feel like this book and Batman 42, her first cover appearance in Batman, are really underappreciated books. I don't know if I would say they're undervalued. Undervalued is always tough, but underappreciated books for what they are. She is arguably the third most popular character in the entire Batman universe behind Batman and the Joker. And she's been around since 1940, over 80 years. And to have a major event like her first cover appearance be, and it's not cheap, but I'm calling it cheap, for what it is. I'm surprised by it. I would think that this book and Batman 42 would sell for more than they do. Now, again, I do own Batman 42. That is one of my keeper books. I'm not trying to pump those books or anything, but it's just something that I think that these books, for what they are much more affordable than I would expect them to be. Now, for alternatives, I already mentioned what I think is a great alternative for this book. It's still Golden Age. It's going to be expensive, but it's Batman number 42. I love that cover. It's the red cover. It's not cheap by any stretch, but it is less expensive than Detective Comics 122. The last 5.0 of Batman 42 sold for $2,999 in November of last year, but a 5.5 sold for $2,640 earlier this year, I think in May. But honestly, I think that was a great price for that book. With my 5.0, there's no way I'd sell it anywhere around that price, so take that for what it is. I think that book is a great alternative to Detective Comics 122. It's not common. I think there's only one copy on eBay right now, but if you can find one that's from someone that's willing to sell it to you, I think it is a great addition to any Batman collection. All right, now number 2. This is the most surprising low sale that I saw this week. This was Alter Ego number 7 with a CGC 9.0 that sold for just $840. The drop in prices in Black Adam books just continues. The only real exception has been Marvel Family number 1, which is his first appearance way back in the Golden Age. But really everything else Black Adam seems to be just tanking. And while this isn't technically a in-canon Black Adam book, this is from the time period when he wasn't really with Fawcett, he wasn't with DC, but this book was created under this Alter Ego publisher or title. Now, this is kind of his Silver Age appearance because he doesn't appear anywhere else in the Silver Age. His only real appearance after Marvel Family 1 is then in Shazam 28 in the Bronze Age, way later, 30 years later or so. So this one is considered kind of a de facto key for him in the Silver Age. Now, I had estimated the price of this book at $1,400. This was 40% below that estimate. This is a really difficult book to price. It sells at some very strange prices. An 8.5 sold in September for $1,675, but a 9.4 sold in August for $1,500. So I just estimated around $1,400, somewhere in that range. It's almost like it has a value in those grades that it'll sell at. It won't really go above it and doesn't really go below it. Now, the record for this book was $1,500 from last year. So this is a drop of 44% from that record. Really, Black Adam books are just ones that I'm kind of wary of right now. We have one of the biggest names in movies that still wasn't really able to help this character out very much. I personally didn't think the movie looked that great. I haven't seen it yet. I know some people say it's great, some people say it's terrible. To me, it kind of looked like it probably had some less than great writing, but we'll see what they do with the character moving forward. I will probably watch it eventually. I'm sure I'll just rent it or something like that. Now, if you want an alternative for this book, the one that I would really go for Black Adam is Shazam 28, but like I said, I'm pretty hesitant about these books right now. Even a 9.4 for that book sold this month for $329. Now, I personally think that was a steal. That was below what the book had been selling for almost ever. That book peaked in a 9.4 at $2,150 last year and even had a sale of $1,800 this year. So that book, I don't know if it can go much lower than where it's at right now, so there's probably not a lot of risk, but I also don't see something that's really going to drive up the value in that book either. All right, now number 1, the most surprising high sale. This is Ultimate Fallout number 4 with a CGC 9.8 that sold for $3,120. This is the first appearance of Miles Morales. If you follow this book, you know how insane this sale price is. This sale price makes no sense. I posted about this on Instagram. There were two kind of like nonsense sales that happened in this auction. This is one of them. The other one was an Amazing Spider-Man 194 and a 9.4. I didn't want to talk about that Amazing Spider-Man book. That sale just seemed so ridiculous, even more so than this one, that I didn't want to give it much more coverage or talk about it much more. Now, I know people will often say that this is somebody trying to inflate the market, or people always overbid at Heritage, that kind of thing. But I just don't think that's what happened here. I don't think it was somebody trying to boost the value of this book. This book is just too common to do that. One high out-of-line sale doesn't really boost the value of the book. It's still going to keep selling for what it's selling for. And also, if you've watched all of the books that I've talked about previously in this video, it's not like books always sell for more on Heritage or anything like that. I talked about 5 books that sold for well below market. And when I do my market videos, basically just the stats for this week, I priced out 172 books. There were 21% that sold for 20% or more above my estimated price. There were 21% that sold for 20% or more below my estimated price, and the remaining 58% sold for within that 20% of market, kind of what you would expect. And so that shows you have books that sell for above market and you have books that sell for below market in every one of these sales. It's not like everything is always above market. But with this book, with Ultimate Fallout 4, it's a weird phenomenon. It often sells for well above market, and I don't know why. Now, I had estimated the price of this book at $1,700. It has been selling around that price consistently for a little while now. This was 84% above that estimate. I guarantee you could go onto eBay right now and get this book for at least $1,000 less than this without any problem. So it's just, these types of sales are always kind of surprising, these big outliers that I just do not understand why they do that. Now, this is still nowhere near the record. The record price was $4,499 from April of this year, but that sale seemed a little suspect as well. Most books were selling around the $3,100 to $3,200 range at that time. And the funny thing is, though, when I was looking at these prices, right around there was also a $3,840 sale at Heritage. So while all the other books were selling around $3,100 to $3,200, you had this Heritage sale that was 20%, just an outsized sale above that. So I just don't get it, but for whatever reason, this specific book often sells for well above market. It's not all the time, but often. Now, this is a book that has been on a pretty consistent downtrend. I would personally be steering clear of it right now. I would not be surprised if it continues going down for a while, unless there's some type of news that comes out about Miles Morales in a movie or something like that. But you don't really need alternatives for it. You can definitely just go and find a lower grade copy or a raw copy, something like that, and get it for quite a bit less. It's not going to be cheap. It has a pretty high base value because people always want this book, but a lot less than the $3,120 or even the $1,700 that this book has traditionally been selling for recently. All right, so those are the 10 books. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please hit that like button, hit the subscribe button if you'd like to see more content like this. I've got more videos over here if you'd like to watch some of my other videos, and the subscription button right here. If you'd like to subscribe to the channel, I'd really appreciate it, and I will see you in the next video.